Hello and welcome to Bean and Bracket Factory, and welcome to the third episode, which is all about my brake pedal. Now, in the first two episodes I made the pedal and did all the fabrication and welding. In this episode I need to paint everything, I need to relocate my water tank, I need to relocate the throttle linkage, I need to make some brake cables. So let's finish it off. So right, I'm now back on the case, and the first thing I need to do is reinstate this throttle linkage, because the issue I have is that the linkage actually fails with these brackets. So I think all I need to do is move it to the right about a centimetre or so and drill 4 more holes and bolt it in. I also might need to move the stop brackets, which were used to stop the throw forwards and backwards. I'll either drill it, or I might actually just flip them the other way around. We'll see. I also might have to change the length of the slot, because I think that's probably a bit too short. But anyway, first things first, let's move that bracket forwards. Throttle linkage now relocated, so when I press the pedal fully down it doesn't hit, which is the main thing. It would have been a shame if it had. I'm going to have to extend the slot just here because it hits it. That's not a problem. I will extend that slot when I take it all off, because I need to take it all off to paint it. But before I do that, I'm going to sort out how I'm going to work out this braided hose. Braided hose are going to come out and go somewhere, so I need to think about that and check back when I've decided what I'm going to do. So I've stared at this for a long time, and I've thought about how I might run the brake line. Initially I was going to run it like that and come down to a hard union down here, but it's all a bit sticky-uppy. I don't like sticky-uppy, so I'm going to get a banjo connection to there, 3/8 banjo connection, and it's going to come in at an angle onto there. Hopefully that will work through that hole, which was obviously put there exactly for that reason, and it's going to come this way. And I'm going to fabricate a bracket which is going to stick up here, have a connection on the banjo on the bracket, and then the hard brake line is going to loop round and basically run down the side there and connect underneath the chassis. So that's the plan. Right now I don't have those parts, so what I'm going to do, given that I've decided how I'm going to do it, I'm going to take all of this off now and I'm going to start painting all of these bits and bobs. So that's next. Start painting. So it's painting time, yee! And we're at the Beanham spray booth, which is basically somewhere I can spray and I don't get paint everywhere. It needs to be dry, and it needs to be warm, and it needs to be relatively dust free. I mean, there's quite a lot of dust kicking around, but there's nothing falling out of the sky. The job itself has been cleaned up, and I've wiped it down with brake cleaner. There's no kind of specks of dust or fluff on it, because they will stick out like a sore thumb. You will notice that has appeared on the top. More about that later. So that is now ready to paint. The paint I'm using is this stuff, and this is Simon Eyes Gloss Black. Used all sorts of different paints. This is a really good paint. This should give us a really nice glossy smooth finish. I'm going to apply 3 coats of this with 10 to 15 minutes between coats. Not get carried away on each coat. Make sure I don't put too much on, because I don't want it to dribble and run. I'm going to shake it for 60 seconds first, and when I've finished each particular coat, I'm going to hold it inverted. No, you can't see that. Hold it inverted and spray it against the back just to clear the nozzle out. So that when I come to spray it next time, it doesn't spit all over it. So let's get cracking. Right, I'll give it 30 seconds. Give a quick test, that's fine. So, right. Right, I put on just enough to cover the metal, and I'm going to give it 10 minutes now. It should dry in 10 minutes. I can't hardly breathe, I'm going to get out of here. And when I come back and have a look at it, and I'll see where you can see the metal through it, so come back in 10 minutes. So it's actually 15 minutes later, and the first coat is alright. It's quite good to have something you can touch to see if it's dry, and it is dry. Well, I'm not going to actually touch the paint with my finger, so you can see bits of metal showing through in various places. But that's a reasonable, you can see it's a bit thin there. It's a reasonable first coat, but I'm going to put 3 on, so that's the first coat. I think what I'm going to do, a bit more of a routine this time. I'm going to do the inside of it and then do the outside, so let's get cracking. Right, that'll do. Set stopwatch another 15 minutes. Hold my breath and come back later. Right, so I ended up actually painting this with 4 coats, and it's now dry. So it's not a mega gloss, but it's very silky and smooth, and certainly good enough, and it will go with the other brackets on the car. So I painted that. And that was attached that with double-sided sticky tape. I've also painted this bracket is here. Again, it's not a mega gloss, but it's nice and silky and smooth. And I also painted this one. Again, these are actually held on with double-sided sticky tape, so you can move it around, you can hold it, and you can spray it, and you can spray your hand. So that's quite nice. And last but not least, there's this bracket as well. Again, not a mega gloss, but very sort of silky, smooth finish. Again, I always make something that's just whittled down and rammed on. Hold it properly, whittled down and rammed on, and I can just use that to hold it, and I can stand it and spray it and move it around. So that's enough painting for now. My lungs can't take it anymore. So I'm now going to turn my attention to that water tank and see what I'm going to do about that. So go and put these back on the car or near the car and focus on the water tank. So back with the car, and I've put my nice new black bracket on there. It's not bolted in firmly, but it's sitting in place. And if you remember, my header tank went just there, and this is my header tank. Won't fit there now, so I either chuck it or make a new one, or what I could do, and what I'm going to do, is I'm going to basically chop it off there. If I cut it off there roughly, it's still over a litre, which is probably plenty. I haven't really got much to lose other than the time of chopping it off and TIG welding another plate on the back, so I can actually squeeze it in this space. So that's the plan. Chop that off. It's only 1.6mm alley, so it's a little bit tricky to TIG, much harder than welding 3mm plate, steel plate. So that'll be an exercise in welding thin gauge alley. So what I'm going to do now is chop that off, make a plate, weld it on. I'm now around where I do the welding, and I'm about to tack it on. So this is 1.5mm alley. Obviously very thin. Everything happens very quickly when you're welding thin alley, so you have to be very careful. Not too much heat, have to get in and out very quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack the top on, and I'm going to basically hold it down with this weight and press it down to make sure everything is touching perfectly before I attempt to tack it in place. I'm going to tack it without using any filler. I'm just going to hold in my my welding tip. I haven't got it, but it's going to be basically right in there like that. Just give it one quick blast, 60 amps, and I'm just going to basically tack tack it all together. When it's tacked together, I'm going to go round, I'm going to hit it with a hammer and make sure everything is touched down and very nipped up very, very tightly. Well, that was almost a lesson in how not to do it. When I first started, the current wasn't enough. It was only 60 and it was basically not heating it up quickly and start to peel away the two areas. So I turned up to 75. I went round and did these other ones. Did these other ones here. And then came back, hammered that all flat and went again. And then afterwards I've just been around and done these middle bits here. So now I'm just going to go around and just tap it and make sure it's pinched completely shut before I attempt to run a bead of weld along there, which is a tricky bit. So I've done two sides, but then I've actually stopped because the whole thing is getting really, really hot. Now, obviously it's getting hot. I'm melting aluminium, but the hotter the job gets, the more difficult it is to weld because the current required to get a weld goes down and down and down. And as it was, I was having to back off on the foot pedal as I got towards the end of the run to turn the current down. So I started off about 75. I was probably down to 60 by the end. And even then you can see it's really starting to melt a lot. So I'm just going to leave it to cool down and stick this big block on it to act as a heat sink. And I'm going to get weld the other two sides when it's actually cool again. Back at the bench now, and as you can hear in the background, it's absolutely pissing it down. But I finished welding this. So in actual fact, I cocked it up because I didn't wait long enough for it to cool down. I ran this weld along here and I blew a hole in it just there. So I had to wait for it to cool down, I had to fettle it and hammer it and close up the gap, and then I picked up the weld and carried it along there. So it's okay, it's a bit lumpy, 6 out of 10 maybe, but it's all good practice and it'll work. So as the saying goes, let's stick it on the car. Tank now on the car. It's still raining, so it's a bit noisy, but you'll also see working in there is the new banjo bolt that turned up. So that's the banjo, that's the bolt. It needs some washer, some copper washers in there. So the way it's going to work is that this brake hose is going to come in there like that, through that hole and out to a bracket just there. So I now need to, this is a special sort of olive compression fitting, so I'm going to attach one end first and then I can measure it up and make a bracket to go just here. So that's next. I'm going to attach this, attach that to that. So I'm now turning my attention to this brake line, and this is what the fittings look like. You've basically got, so basically a simple compression fitting. This is the inside of it. This is like a little olive that goes on the end of the pipe, and this is the compression that goes in there like that. So what you do, is you've got the end of your braided hose like this, and what you do is you very carefully, using something pokey, is you separate the braid away. Just peel the braid back like that, gradually create a bit of a space. When you've peeled it back, you take your little olive, which is, where's it gone? This bit here, and you press it down onto that plastic tube. And in true Blue Peter style, here is one I prepared earlier. So what I've done is I've peeled this back and I've pressed the olive onto there. Now this is my fitting, this is the banjo one, and I squeeze it in there like that. It's a very tight fit, which is obviously good. And then this outer comes up here on like that, and I tighten it all up nice and tightly. Obviously I'm going to use a spanner after this, tighten it all up, and that is my fitting. Cunning, eh? So I'm going to tighten that up and stick it on the car, and then I can measure up the other end and mark where I'm going to need to cut it to put this end on. And this end, the other end, is a female which screws onto this bulkhead fitting, which will go through the bracket. Anyway, I'll explain that more to that when I've put this on the car. So now I've fitted the brake line to the master cylinder, and it comes round to just here. You see I've made this cardboard template for a cardboard bracket that has got a big hole in it, not just to make it lighter, but these rubber tubes, silicon tubes, need to come through there. One is the breather, one actually connects to the rad. So now I need to make that bracket out of steel, connect this bulkhead fitting, and mark up and chop this this hose. Bracket now made and attached to car, and I've also trimmed this brake line hose, brake hose, and unfitted it, and I've made sure it doesn't actually touch anything. Doesn't touch that, doesn't touch that. So the only thing left to do now is actually connect this to the rest of the system, and I'm going to use normal, don't think it's pure copper, brake line like this, and it's going to use this female adapter. It's going to go like that. So all I need to do is cut a length of this pipe and swage the end on and fit that on. So I'll show you that. I'll show you what's involved in doing that, and then that'll be it, I think. So I now need to put a flare on the end of this brake tube, and this needs to be threaded on first, and I'm going to use this cam operated flaring tool. So what I do is I loosen this off, put the pipe in there like that, just push this up so it just touches the nose of the die, tighten the clamp, and when I pull this lever back, it puts a flare on the end of the brake line, and this is copper, it's pure copper brake line. So I take this out and have a look at it. You can see that's what the flare looks like, extreme close up, and this thing will slide up like that. Now I need to bend the pipe in situ to make it fit the car. It's very important to, when you bend, make sure your fitting is right at the very end, because if you bend it, then you can't slide the fitting around sometimes. So I'm going to bend this and offer it up and work out what the run's going to be like. And there it is, the brake line is now fitted to the bulkhead fitting. So that was pretty much the last step. I now need to bleed the brakes and take it out for a little test drive, etc. But I think that's all for now. If you like that, please hit like. If you want to watch any of my other videos, I've got all sorts of things planned in terms of more modifications to the car. If you feel like you want to watch those, then hit subscribe. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.